welcome to Intoxicated Masculinity. If it's Wednesday, then, well, I haven't talked to you for a while. I meant to put out a video sort of specifically on this, but I figure I never miss in October, so we'll talk about it now. I think there's a lot going on right now in my life, and so I have decided to put the channel on hiatus just a little bit. We might do more cocktail stuff later on. We might do something different. I'm still kind of deciding exactly what we're going to do. But again, as I said, I never miss in October. I love horror movies, and so we are going to do our 31 Days of Horror. But it would not be this channel if we didn't accompany it with a beverage. So, I am having a Maker's Mark. This is a distillery-only release here in 2024. 108 proof. This is 10 Virgin French Oak Staves. This is just one of their barrel picks. I picked it up when I was in Kentucky for Scarefest, which very good convention. And let's give it a try. For those who don't know Maker's Mark, they a lot of their stuff is very similar, the same mash bill for everything, but they do have their 46 series where they basically put different staves inside the barrel when they age it for another, I think it's 6 months or something like that. And it's different sort of staves that you can pick, and this is 10 Virgin French Oak. Smells like Maker's Mark. A lot of toffee on the nose, candy, real sweet. It's real oaky. It's one of the oakier makers that I've had before. And using virgin French oak, you would think that. Yeah, vanilla and oak. Some toffee, I guess. It's real sweet, real tasty. That's a good one. But let's talk about what we're here for. So as usual, I watch 31 horror movies in October. And I always try to watch always watch 31 new horror movies that I've never seen before. And I'm sort of going to talk about these in a little bit different order than I watched them, for reasons which will be kind of made apparent. So I started off watching a bunch of the Japanese horror that I had not watched before, and that is starting off with Ringu. Obviously I'd seen Ring when it came out, and several times since. I think that's a really, really good remake, and this is the one case where I think the remake is a little better than the original. The original is good. It is a little slow-paced. It just doesn't feel like it's a nice whole together, I guess. I don't know. It's not a bad movie. It didn't do a ton for me. I think some of the J-horror, I guess, hasn't agreed with me as much as I was kind of hoping it would. Although we'll talk about one that I liked a lot here in a minute. Next, so I watched Ju-On the Grudge, which is an incredibly confusing series. I have not seen any of the other Ju-On movies, which apparently there's Ju-On the Curse, Ju-On the Curse 2, Ju-On the Grudge, Ju-On the Grudge 2, and it kind of goes on from there where he fights the girl from The Ring, or Ringu, for reasons which I don't understand. Ju-On's kind of weird, and it's got some kind of strange pacing. One of the things you'll notice when you watch horror movies from different cultures is we all have kind of our own cultural perspective. And so when you watch a movie that comes from a different cultural perspective, like, it's a little jarring. It's different because culture, kind of matters in our lives. And Ju-On just kind of didn't. It's a decent movie. I didn't dislike it, but it just didn't kind of trip my trigger. I did, however, like it better than the American remake, The Grudge. I'm counting this as a new watch. I think that I may have seen this or parts of this when it came out. I was actually deployed to Iraq when this came out, so if I saw it, it was probably on one of those DVDs you got overseas where it's just somebody, filming the screen. And so if I had seen it before, which I may have, I don't remember anything about it. So it's less weird than the Japanese original, which I think actually takes something kind of away from it, because it's the same filmmaker that made both films, and the remake is just kind of the first one, but kind of less interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what their plan was for that one. It didn't seem to work for me. Now, Kato, which is the original Japanese version of Pulse, I liked a lot. It is very sort of moody and atmospheric and kind of bleak. it's not. And the American remake, by the way, is not a good movie at all. The American remake just turned it into kind of a jump scary, look out for the ghost thing. Whereas the original Japanese film is kind of a meditation on loss and existence and all this other stuff, and the American remake is just like, ooh, scary ghost. So Kato was my favorite of all of the J-horror that I watched in this period. I liked it quite a bit. Would watch it again. Next we have Dark Water. So I watched the Japanese version. I had seen the American remake. I found the American remake to be fine. I found the original Japanese to be a little better than fine. I think it's better than the American remake. Doesn't have Jennifer Connelly in it, but what can you do? It's decent. It just didn't do a ton for me. I think it's one of those movies that, I don't know. It just didn't. And this was kind of a string throughout a lot of the J-horror where it's not something that I think it's bad. It's just some things you can watch and say, okay, that's for other people. It's not for me. It's good, and for some people, I'm sure it's great. It just wasn't great for me. The two worst that I came across. So the Japanese version of One Missed Call, I found to be. So first of all, it's Takashi Miike, or Takashi Mike. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce his name. Who's sort of known for very extreme horror, and this was not extreme in the least. This was whatever the opposite of extreme, pretty mild, and I think kind of soft and didn't make a lot of sense, and I didn't care for it. And then I watched the American remake, which is nothing. It's just a big old nothing. It's a real bad movie. What did I say about it? Just a complete mess. Several unintentional lulls. Apparently, this is something that's kind of interesting. So apparently, this movie was written as a comedy, and there are points in the movie where you definitely can see, oh, wait a minute, this was supposed to be funny, and it still is kind of funny, but definitely not in the way that it was intended. So yeah, J-horror, I think that it's not like they're not good movies. It just kind of not for me, except for Keiro, which again the American or the Japanese version of Pulse, which I thought was fantastic. The rest of them just were kind of fine and just didn't do a ton for me. So moving from Japan back to the States, we have Violet, which came out last year. It's sort of a moody thriller about a woman trying to protect her daughter. There is some interesting relationships between her and her husband, and her and the rest of the neighborhood and the town. It is a very kind of God, I always hate to use the word atmospheric because who knows what that even really means. It feels like it's a word people use and they can't think of a proper word to call it. It does create this very, very unique atmosphere of dread, though. And the mother is very seems like a very kind of damaged character. I liked it quite a bit. I would recommend Violet. It's got kind of an interesting ending. Not going to give anything away. I don't like to do spoilers in this type of thing. But yeah, I enjoyed that quite a bit. Okay, this is the one that will get me in trouble with slasher fans. I watched In a Violent Nature. I feel like this movie among slasher fans is one of those ones that I think for a lot of people is going to be an instant classic. I thought this movie was absolutely dull, just incredibly. So I mean, the purpose of the movie is there is a serial killer in a slasher film, except this time you're following the serial killer. I think it kind of misses what people like about slasher flicks, because the serial killer in slasher flicks is rarely the most interesting thing. I mean, their kills are interesting, but the killers themselves just walk around silently, and that's not that fun to watch. I mean, I think if you watch your Friday the 13th and your Nightmare on Elm Streets, I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street being a little bit different because Freddy Krueger does talk, but if Halloween, I guess, being the better analogy, the irritating campers, or the cool campers, whoever you like, that's kind of what brings you to the movie and what keeps you interested in between the kills. And this one, there's just not much going on between the kills except a guy walking around in the wilderness. And I just didn't... I don't know. Put in the comments why I'm wrong. Put in the comments why In a Violent Nature is a genius film and I'm an idiot for... unwell-read kind of a person for not liking it. But I didn't care for it at all. I thought it was very, very dull. Oh, next we have WNUF Halloween Special. I think this was Amazon Prime or maybe Shudder or AMC. I watched them all at the same time because if you have AMC, you get to watch Shudder on Prime. So one of those. I liked a lot of what was going on in this movie. I think a lot of the stuff that's sort of happening, and I think it's happening during like 1987, is pretty good. But it is one of those films that kind of wears out its welcome for me. Because you're watching the movie and they do these commercials, which are very sort of period accurate. And you kind of watch the commercial and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then you're an hour into the movie and they're still doing commercials and you're like, I get it. The commercials are period accurate. Let's get back to the narrative. Which the narrative is pretty thin. You know, it's just this reporter showing these various people around this supposedly haunted house. These would have been great as like a 25-minute short, I think. Because I think the style's really good. I think that the sort of look of the film is really, really good. I think the actors are doing a pretty good job at sort of portraying these sort of local news anchor type people. But it just doesn't have, you know, an hour and 23 minutes worth of stuff you want to watch in it. And this has actually happened, I think, a few times this time, or through this October, where there's a movie where it's like, okay, I like a lot of what's going on here, but I just don't feel like it would have been. They always say it would have been. This meeting should have been an email. This film should have been a short film, and I think it would have been a lot, but it would have been a lot stronger too. So I did watch some short films this year. I'm not gonna get into short films. I don't think that's really what this is about. And I think sometimes those short films, they're punchy, they get in there, they get the job done, and then they're over. And you don't have to watch commercials for an hour and 23 minutes, which is a little frustrating. But I still would probably recommend it, because just for what it is and what it looks like is pretty impressive. All right, VHS Beyond. I don't know what to say about these movies anymore. I've watched all of them. I've watched all of them several times. They, generally speaking, kind of get to the point of being okay. There's a couple really good segments. I think the Fur Babies segment in this one is pretty good. And everything else, like this one, they use the framing device of a mockumentary or a mockumentary. And I think that's a good framing device. But I don't feel like it pulls it together, which, I mean, basically all of the wraparound stories for the VHS have been pretty bad. I don't think there have been any that have been good. This might even be the best one, but that's a pretty low bar. I mean, so this one is sort of focused on the sci-fi, and I just don't know if, given the budget of these types of things, I don't know if that was a great idea. Fur Babies is good. I'd watch Fur Babies. That's a fun segment. All right, House of Spoils. So, I like this movie. I don't want to come off as negative on this movie. I did like this movie. I think the lead actress, who is Ariana DeBose, who was in the West Side Story remake recently, I think she's really good in it. I think what hurts this movie is I just saw Menu 2 years ago, and it feels like, and these two are not handling the same. They're both about cooking, but they're not handling exactly the same subject matter, so I don't want to make it seem like this is a copy of that. It is not in any way, shape, or form. But they are both movies about sort of interesting and avant chefs. And The Menu was, you know, one of the best horror movies I've ever seen. I love that movie so much. This one, I feel like it's a little, I don't know, it lightens up. Like it feel like it should have been weirder. And I feel like it was on the verge of being a lot weirder, and it kind of pulls it back a little bit at the end. I do like the message of the film, especially when you get all the way through it. I think it's telling kind of an interesting story and kind of a little bit subversive in some ways. And I liked it. I wish I'd liked it a little bit more. So this is a solid like A-, A- to A. It can't sneak up into an A+, unfortunately. The Lie. Yeah. So this one was pretty good. This is sort of a family thriller. It's about a husband and wife who are divorced. Alexander Skarsgård plays Peter Sarsgaard, not Alexander Skarsgård. Peter Sarsgaard plays the father. Joey King plays the daughter. and Mariel Inez plays the mother. Again, without giving too much away, it is sort of the parents are divorced and their daughter is having some problems. Something happens and it sort of brings the mother and father together to sort of deal with that problem. There's another character in the movie who, as soon as he came on screen, he looked kind of familiar, but then he started talking and I was like, I know that guy's voice. And it's the guy who did the voice for Altair in Assassin's Creed. And so I still remember that one. It's a good movie. I don't think it's bringing a ton new to the table. Like, I think if you've sort of seen family thrillers, family drama type movies, I don't think there's anything here that's going to, blow your skirt up. But I thought it was good. It's very serviceable. The twist is not as surprising as it probably could be, but there you go. Good movie. I would recommend it. All right, Bones and All. So this came out 2 years ago. I actually missed this when it came. I meant to see this in the theater and I never did, and it just kind of, sat out there and I didn't get to it. I think the female lead that is Taylor Russell looks a lot like Jenna Ortega. Like, they have a very similar kind of facial structure. This is sort of a coming-of-age drama about cannibals, and I think it's really effective. I think one of the early scenes, something happens and it is incredibly unexpected, both by the audience and the other characters on screen. Mark Rylance plays kind of the villain of the picture. I think he's really good, very creepy. Timothy Chalamet, or however you prefer to pronounce his name, is good in it. Just, again, kind of feels like a coming-of-age movie with a whole lot of blood and people eating each other's flesh. Liked it a lot. Would recommend. Okay. A Quiet Place Day One. So I didn't see this in the theater, obviously. I just caught it when it came to VOD. I don't know. So the Quiet Place movies I have sort of controversial opinion on. They all kind of feel like horror movies for a non-horror audience. I just don't feel like they bring much to the table as far as, like, they feel a little empty. And like here you've got Lupita Nyong'o, who's obviously a fantastic actress. But it just kind of feels like you kind of see everything coming. I'm against prequels in general. I think prequels are kind of dumb. We'll talk about another prequel that I liked even less than this in a little bit. And I don't get it. Like, I don't get anything out of it. I walk out of A Quiet Place movies just thinking, okay, a few jump scares, and that's about it. I don't know. Not for me, I guess. If you like the other Quiet Place movies, you'll probably like it. I didn't like the other ones, and I didn't like this one, so I would say this is about on level with the other two Quiet Place movies, which means I didn't care for it. So I promise I'm not going to be negative. Actually, overall, this was a pretty good month. I saw a lot of movies that I liked quite a bit. Hold your breath. Sarah Paulson is a fantastic actress. I love her. She's been great. And one of the few good things that's good in the American Horror Story television show. And not surprisingly, she hasn't been on there in a long time. This is like a period drama about a spirit that attacks people during Dust Bowl Middle America, and it just feels very kind of paint by numbers, what if trauma, but kind of thing. And I don't know, I just feel like I've seen this movie 50 times before, and this is doing exactly the same things those other movies did, except not as well. So I didn't care for it very much. I don't think it's bad. And again, Sarah Paulson, being the actress that she is, elevates what I think is a pretty mediocre script. So I can't really recommend it. If you like period horror, like if you liked The Vivitch and you want to watch something that's like that except not as good, then I would give this a try. If you like The Vivitch and you want something better, don't watch this one. Daddy's Head. I think this was a fucking bizarre, cool, interesting, weird, kind of sci-fi horror movie. Basically, there is a kid who his mother has died and his father is dating this new woman, and the father, and this all happens before the movie starts, doesn't really spoil anything. And right prior to the movie, the father is in an accident, is on a ventilator, and they take him off the ventilator and he passes away. In the house, which is a really cool house, and I'm going to talk about this later. There's another movie that did this, well, two other movies did this very well. The location is doing a lot of work in this movie. and in a very good way. Like, the house is a very bizarre, cool-looking house, and I think that on top of the actors doing a good job, and I think on top of the script being pretty good, like, just the location's really good. It seems like a place that's somehow, like, it's ritzy, because clearly this house is, like, clearly these people have money. But also it's very rural and just kind of strange, and I thought this was a lot of fun and weird, and I like weird and fun. So Daddy's Head was quite good. I like that a lot. The next, I'm going to talk about 3 movies all together, and this is in the sort of, these are the ones that I have a really hard time saying what, like, my rating is on these. So it is Cruel Summer 1, 2, and 3. It is Scott Tepperman, who is an indie filmmaker from northern Florida. I actually met him when I was at Scarefest. I did not think to do any recording when I was down there. I kind of meant to, but I just didn't get around to it, unfortunately. These are backyard horror flicks. So it is about a killer who kills people during summer. It doesn't get a whole lot deeper than that. I think what they do, like, so when you watch a movie like this, do you call it bad? Like, I don't feel like you can ding a movie for its budget alone. And I think that if this movie had a bigger budget, it probably would be pretty good. So it's tough to rank. I think it's worth your time, especially if you're into slashers and you want something that's a little tongue-in-cheek, and, you know, not too, like, I think it's, the first one's an hour 20. The second one is, it doesn't say. And the third one's an hour 49, which is probably a little long. I think I even put that in my notes. The third one's a little bit too long. But yeah, it's fun. You can tell the people in here are passionate about, you know, the horror genre and having a lot of fun. And I don't think you're gonna hate this. I mean, again, I'm not gonna say it's gonna be your favorite horror movie of all time, but, like, there's true passion here, because making a movie is really hard. And for somebody to go through and make 3 movies, and, you know, they're not making, people aren't recouping a Ritz-Carlton, or excuse me, people are not, you know, recouping a Mercedes-Benz off of these films. This is something that's done, you know, purely for passion, and I have to respect that. And I didn't hate them. I thought they're kind of fun. All right, now this is a big one, and I feel like there's a lot of disagreement in the horror community about this. So I went to the one when I went to Scarefest, I saw Smile 2 in the theater there, right across the street. Again, I feel like I'm plugging Scarefest a lot here, but I don't mind, because I really like that convention down in Lexington, Kentucky. I really like this movie a lot. I don't know if I can say it's better than the first. It's weird, with it being kind of the same concept, this is a very different film from the first one. The first film is a very small movie about one person's experience. This movie is definitely expanding that. I mean, it is obviously one person who's experiencing this, but it's just a bigger movie. It's just expanded all around. And it looks great. Like, first of all, it does look great. Like, it's filmed really great. The filming style is fantastic. The choreography is great. Naomi Scott, obviously, is the star of the film, and like, there's no nudity or anything of her in the film, but it is a very close movie. And I guess when I say that, what I mean is, like, it is not like Naomi Scott walking around over there. Like, the camera is in her face, like, all the time. And I really think that's got to be tough for an actress or an actor to just kind of be that kind of into the camera's just right there. And I think she plays it fantastically. So I don't know if it's better than the first one. It's not worse than the first one. And I also watched Parker Finn's 2 short films, and they were both really good too. So I don't know where this guy came from, but I really hope we see a lot more. I will not spoil anything, but the end definitely does suggest a follow-up. It would be my hope that they do a 3rd one and then stop, because I think it'd be good to have a nice, really solid Smile trilogy, and not, trail off into Smile 7, Smile in Space, or something like that. Really good, really good. Naomi Scott's fantastic. I think this is going to be... The movie's done pretty well, I think, theatrical, although not amazing. But I think it's going to get a lot of critical looks. So that's a good thing. And yeah, she's great in it. All right. So next is one called Serial. This is actually a web series, but at Scarefest they screened it as a feature. It is basically these 2 serial killers. One played by I'm sorry, I don't have the actor's name. Stephanie Harlow plays one of the serial killers, and the other guy. And I met the cast when I was there, and they were all very, very nice. The only complaint I had about it is the pacing was a little strange, but I didn't know that it was a web series when I watched it, so that kind of made more sense. These were, I think, in anywhere between 5 and 10 minute increments. And I think so if you watch this as a web series, it probably makes more sense. As a feature, the pacing feels a little off. But again, it wasn't filmed as a feature, so that's not really a ding against it. I think it's pretty fun. It's again, fairly low budget, but I think they use their budget pretty well. I think it looks higher budget than it is. And I think that both of the two leads do a really good job. And I enjoyed it quite a bit. All right. Deer Camp 86. So I feel like when you look at a film or look at a trailer, you sort of have your certain expectations of it. And I feel like this one, you kind of had expectation of it being kind of an exploitation, which is a little bit of an exploitation film, kind of slasher flick. And it actually is kind of interesting. There's a lot more going on in this movie, and it kind of, especially when you see the last scene of the movie, you realize that they're actually kind of doing something kind of important with this movie. It's not a high budget movie, and I think, again, like the last one, I think they make their budget. I think they really stretch that budget out, and they make it look a hell of a lot better than they probably had any right for it to look. And I enjoyed it. Again, just a bunch of guys going out into the woods on a hunting trip, and terrible things happen. And you have to wait to the end to see who did the terrible things and did they deserve it, and more. All right, next from Netflix, Woman of the Hour with Anna Kendrick. It is actually her directorial debut. This was good. So this is about the woman whose name is, Cheryl. Oh, I can't remember the last name. Anyway, Cheryl Bradshaw. Excuse me. Who went on the dating game and was paired up with somebody who turned out was an active serial killer. She ended up not going on a date with him. Thankfully, and he was caught later on and just died in prison because he seemed like he was a really terrible person. So I don't think I would watch this movie for 100% historical accuracy because they take a lot of liberties with it. But I think the liberties are in pursuit of something more interesting and sort of showing. And I've talked about this in conversations with people I know about this period. So this takes place in 1978, where you have all these serial killers that are active. And it sort of brings to mind, like, how are these people getting away with this for so long? And you see in this that a lot of these guys weren't even hiding their crimes very well. It's just people were just like, a woman would go in and say, hey, this happened to me. And they'd be like, just being hysterical, get over it. And it gives interesting historical perspective, which I enjoyed. Again, not, like I would say, give it a historical accuracy of like maybe 65%, something like that. But I think it is not being historically inaccurate for the hell of it. Is doing it in furtherance of something, and I think that something is valid and interesting, and I think it's a pretty good movie. Okay, so I actually watched these in the opposite order that I'm going to talk about them. So first I'm going to talk about Caveat. That is Damian McCarthy, and this is another movie, and the next one even more so, where the setting is a character, and maybe the most important character. In this film, a guy asks another guy if he will come out and watch his niece, who has some mental health problems, and says he needs to watch her for, I think, 7 days or something like that. Ring callback. Her father and her father passed away, and her mother is missing. And this house, and again, we'll talk about it in the next movie as well, because the next movie takes place in the same house, is just very unnerving and creepy. And not in the big sort of Victorian mansion creepy, just kind of like big and cavernous and rural kind of creepy. All the actors are, I don't think these are real big name actors. I've never seen these actors in anything before. But I think they do a fantastic job. It's just got this sort of constant sense of dread that I liked very much. Which is going to lead to his second movie, the one that came out this year, which is Oddity. The strange thing about Oddity is it feels like it's a standard kind of fairy tale horror, but like turned by like 10 degrees off center. The filming looks fantastic. I think you get a better sense of the location in this one than you did in Caveat. The two films, to my knowledge, are not related or interconnected. And there is a short film about one of the characters that I did not get a chance to watch. It's great. It's about a doctor who he and his wife has bought this new house in the rural countryside. And well, I won't spoil anything. Something happens to her, and you sort of learn what that is, what was going on. I thought it was really great. Again, it's the same house, I guess. That's what it seems to say, as Caveat was filmed in. They make use of it even better, in an even better way here. It's just filmed great. Like, I feel like how the house is half the reason why this film is as good as it is. It is just incredibly, I think, Spartan. I would say that it is very Spartan on the inside. But also, I don't know. It's hard to say. It's Spartan, but it also looks nice, but it looks also very remote. Yeah, just a really, really interesting movie. Can't recommend that one enough. Really, really good one. Oddity. Oddity was really, really great. All right, next we have Open 24 Hours. This is a serial killer stalks a girl at work. There's a little more to it than that, but that's pretty simple. And I think in this case, simple is good. A girl who has just gotten out of a institution or prison, I think I'm not entirely sure which, and she is applying for a job at this gas station, gets the job in her first night shift, as the gas station is open 24 hours, and maybe some terrible things happen. I like the characters. I thought it felt kind of real. I think it's a cool movie. Not perfect. It's a little lower budget, but as kind of goes with a lot of the movies that I saw this month, they don't let the lower budget hurt it, and I think it still looks pretty good. I mean, it still looks like, it looks like a movie, like a real movie. Okay, next we have Samara Weaving, and so obviously I'm going to rate it well because I love Samara Weaving in horror. This is Azrael. This is sort of, I think it's probably safe to say, some kind of post-apocalyptia type situation, although I don't think they established that entirely, but it is hinted at enough that I think it's safe to say that. The film has virtually no dialogue, except for one character who speaks a little bit. It's very, very creepy. It is somebody being hunted through a jungle by a crazy cult, and maybe some zombie stuff. Yeah, no, it's good. It's nice and breezy. An hour 26. I haven't talked as much about runtime as I usually do, but most of these movies are right around that 90-minute mark, which is, I think, where horror typically shines. Actually, Smile 2 is longer. Smile 2 is 2 hours and 7 minutes, and to be fair, I think they probably could have cut that down to closer to like an hour 50, hour 40, and it probably would have been a little bit tighter. But yeah, just a nice sort of surviving the woods, running from a cult, as we have all experienced in the past. I really enjoyed that. So next, I've got a couple that I did not like, unfortunately. And so Mads. So Mads is the one that I watched, and it came fairly highly recommended. I think it's getting a lot of buzz. It came out this year. 1 hour 26 minutes, which is good. And it is sort of a zombie movie with a little bit different twist. It is a single shot, so the whole movie is one single shot, or at least it is made to look like it's one single shot. I'm not sure. I couldn't find if they did cuts or not. There's a couple of places where I saw where they could have done cuts. And this movie is tough for me because I think from this perspective of craft, the way it's filmed and how they did that is pretty amazing. And I am legitimately impressed with it. The story is just really ho-hum. Like, if you've seen one zombie movie, you've seen this before. And it just didn't really do much for me. But I think that the craft is good enough that you're probably not going to regret seeing this movie. I think you're probably going to be like, that was worth watching just because of the technical acumen on display. But ultimately, I didn't love it. And now I think probably the movie that I liked the least is Apartment 7A. So typically in October, I try to make it a point to see as little about a movie before I watch it. I'm just now looking at the poster, and so many things would have been given away if I had watched more on this. So as I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this seems a lot like Rosemary's Baby. And there's multiple things. A bunch of the characters look like characters from Rosemary's Baby. And I did not make the connection. It actually is. This is a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. And if your question is why would you make a prequel to Rosemary's Baby, the answer is I have no idea, because it's not good. Because it doesn't do anything to build on Rosemary's Baby, which is a movie that I am not in love with as much as I think a lot of people are. I think it's good craft and everything, but I don't know. I don't like movies about cults. Because satanic cults are things that have been exploited in horror for a long time, and in the real world are essentially just fantasy. There are not satanic cults trying to kill babies. There just aren't. So I kind of hate the premise of it. And ultimately, it's just like, as the movie goes on, there's just no surprises. It's exactly what you expect. And again, the only reason why there was any surprises at all is because I didn't know this was a prequel to Rosemary's Baby when I went into it. Just ho-hum. Just real ho-hum. Kind of doesn't do anything for me at all. It's just like, because the real action in Rosemary's Baby happens in Rosemary's Baby. And it's sort of the inherent weakness of the prequel. Because if this story was really important, it would have been what the original movie was about. But it wasn't, because it's not. Unless you are a big Rosemary's Baby fan, I would give this a pass. And if you are a big Rosemary's Baby fan, I would probably still give this a pass. I hate to say this because, again, it's nothing against the actors and actresses and people that are in this, but it's just nothing. Like, it just doesn't do anything. It's Rosemary's Baby, but less. All right, so movie 31, my last movie. Well, we're gonna do one bonus. The last movie of the 31 is Haunt, and this is from 2019. And this is from that sort of haunted house genre. And when I say haunted house, here I'm talking commercial haunted house. Take your Houses October Built, your Hell House LLCs, that type of thing. And I think this one fills in that pretty well. I don't think it's as good as Hell House LLC, at least not the first one. It's probably better than some of the sequels. It's got a good amount of gore. I don't know that the overarching plot makes a lot of sense, but it doesn't really need to. It's teenagers going to a haunted house, or teenagers going to a haunted house and being slaughtered, and they get slaughtered well, and it looks good. And I think ultimately, if you are judging a film based on did it give you what you expected, this gives you exactly what you're looking for. So if you want to see a movie where people go to a commercial haunted house and a bunch of horrible things happen, I think you're going to be really happy with this. And so that is my 31 Days of Horror. But I have one bonus, because it's another movie that I watched, and I had a really hard time trying to figure out how I would rate it. And ultimately, I decided not to rate it. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. And that is 13 Fanboy. So this movie came out in 2021, directed by Deborah Voorhees. And this is a movie about a serial killer that is stalking people that were in Friday the 13th and Dee Wallace. Which right there's kind of the problem, because Dee Wallace wasn't in those. Dee Wallace was in Halloween, the remake of Halloween, and I think it's just a situation where they got her and they were like, well, we can't, if we have Dee Wallace, we can't not put her in this thing. I don't dislike the movie. I don't think it's bad. I think my problem is I don't feel any weight towards it. And the reason I wanted to talk about it, and especially going to Scarefest, there is one thing that I sort of worry about in the horror genre, and this is amongst fans, this is not amongst filmmakers. Because I think if you look at filmmakers, horror is a genre that is constantly reinventing itself and constantly refreshing itself and doing new things. But when I talk to fans, a lot of horror fans that I talk to have no interest in new horror. And I find that to be kind of depressing. Most of the movies that I've talked about so far in this episode have been new horror movies. And I think some of them are fantastic. And some of them aren't great, but they're interesting still. So I'm a little nervous about that. People only talking about the Friday the 13th movies. People only talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And I feel like not as many people are talking about Smile. I think they're talking about Terrifier, but Terrifier I think is kind of an interesting case. And so I have not seen Terrifier 2 or 3. I have seen All Hallows Eve and the first Terrifier. And I think they like them because the Terrifier movies are just sort of aping what the 80s slasher movie was without really adding anything to it. And that I think is kind of the problem. I just don't feel like so many leaps and bounds have been taken in horror over the past 25 years. And I think to just look back at this decade of the 80s, which I might do a decade ranking. I've seen people do that before, and I think I have some interesting opinions on that. But the 80s is definitely not, at least for my opinion, definitely not the best decade in horror. I don't think it's really even close. And so if you are saying this and you want to take one message away, again, message you got talking about horror movies, but give a lot of new horror a try. There's a lot of really, really cool new horror movies out there. There are new dynasties being created every day. I mean, we talked about a movie with Samara Weaving. I think she's already got a tremendous horror resume. Anya Taylor-Joy, tons of other people out there that are just doing tons of really good horror. And I think that people are sort of not getting past their own nostalgia and sort of getting into those things that I think they would like a lot. Because like I said, my complaint about this is only about the fans. It's not about filmmakers, because filmmakers are doing new horror in really, really interesting new ways all the time. And so I don't want this to be like I am sort of, piling on 13 fanboy. I think it's a bad movie. It's not what I'm saying at all. I think it's fun. I think it's breezy. I think if you like Friday the 13th movies, I think you'll probably get something out of it. But the problem is, I feel like over-focusing on that nostalgia can blind you to a lot of really good stuff that's coming out today. And I think that's a bit of a shame. But that is all I have for you this October. I think this was, I had a couple that I didn't like, but overall, Violet really good, Bones and All's really good, House of Spoils was really good, Daddy's Head I liked a lot. What else? Deer Camp 86 was really good. Oddity and Caveat were both very good. Azrael was good. Mads I didn't love, but the craft of it is incredibly impressive. So yeah, this is a good year. This is a good year for horror, and this is a good decade for horror. So go out, seek out new things. So on that bombshell, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Have a good drink, and have a good night.